Hey guys, welcome to this video where we are going to go over the different types of visa options available for Australia. So whether you're looking to come here on a vacation or a holiday, or whether you're a student who's looking to study here, or if you want to come here to work, or if you even want to come to do business, or if you're interested in moving here as a permanent resident, this video will cover all the different options available for you. So stay tuned and let's get straight into it. I'm going to switch on my pointer and have my cup of a special drink inside this, and grab a cup of coffee or your favorite beverage if you want to relax, because this is going to be long, this is going to be fun though, and it's going to be very informative. So if any one of you has been struggling with this information, I wish I had this information back when I was applying for my visa. I was applying for a permanent resident visa a few years back, and it was such a struggle to get all this information. So this is just my way of giving back. So the different types of visa available, and just a quick disclaimer before I get into the content. I'm not an agent. Nothing that I say should be taken as migration advice. I'm simply breaking down information available. This is stuff that's all freely available at the Australian government's website. I encourage you to check the website as well before taking any decision, because the rules and the laws and the different types of visas available are being updated on a regular basis. They change every few years. So this is up to date to the best of my information, and which is available on the government website. But do your own checks and research before taking any decision, or work with an authorized agent if you don't have the time to do your own research. So a quick disclaimer. All right, so out of the different visa options available, the first visa option that we're going to go over is the holiday or a vacation visa. Now, I've broken this down into two categories. One is just a normal visitor category, and one is a working holiday category where you can have a holiday and work at the same time. So the first visa category, which is the visitor visa category only, is broken down into three subgroups, and these three subgroups are based on the country that you're applying for. So the Australian government has ties with certain countries where the visa processing for a visitor visa takes place on a much quicker basis, and there's not much work to be done in terms of application or putting across your application for the visa. Okay, so the visitor visa 600 is for countries that do not have such an agreement with the Australian government, and it's $140 for the visa. The ETA, or the Electronic Travel Authority visa, is a set of few 20 or so countries that have an agreement, but you still need to pay $20. And the eVisitor visa, which is the 651 visa, is completely free. Just do an online application and you get your visa within a day. Okay, so like I said, it's broken into three categories. You can visit or meet your friends, family, or you can even for business purposes, you can visit on all three visas. You can attend trade shows, you can travel around Australia, but it's only for a limited amount of time. You're not able to stay indefinitely. Most of these visas are for up to 3, 6, or 12 months. Moving on, so these are the list of countries for the 651 visa, which is the free visa, and the visa that is processed, the visitor visa that's processed relatively quickly. You have these list of countries. So if you're a person who's part of this country and you're looking to visit here, getting a visa is very straightforward. And the next one, the 601, which is the $20, where you need to pay a $20 fee. These are the list of countries that particular visa is available to. And you also have the 600 visa, which is the final visa, or the category where Australia doesn't have an agreement with specific countries. Now, yeah, again, for this visa, the application time is a bit longer. So this is the latest application time that the Australian department has updated on their website. So it's 17 days, 29 days, 17 days for 75% of the applications, 29 days for 90% of the applications. So give yourself at least a month before applying if you're coming here on a tourist visa and you are not part of those countries that I showed before. Okay, and you can check the latest processing times on the Australian government website. Yeah, the average processing time for the ETA visa is less than a day. So if you're in that category, you can get your visa relatively quickly. Okay, so the next visa is the working holiday visa. So like I said, within the holiday stream, you have just the normal visit visa, and you also have the working holiday visa. So what the working holiday visa lets you do, it lets you travel and work in Australia at the same time. So there are certain countries again that the Australian government has a tie-up with, where you can travel and work at the same time. Okay, so and this visa is broadly categorized into like working holiday visa subclass 417 and work and holiday visa subclass 462. The differences I'll get to in a minute, but basically it's like different countries and a few additional minor differences between the two categories. Okay, so if you're part of these countries listed over here, you can apply for the 417 visa, working holiday visa. So here's the list of countries. Let's see what this visa allows you to do. It allows young people to have a holiday and work in Australia for up to a year. You must hold an eligible passport. Again, you need to be a passport holder of the list that I mentioned before. You need to be 18 to 30 years of age. You need to not have come previously to Australia on this visa, and you can stay for 12 months. You can enter and exit, and you can also work for the entire duration of a visa, but only for 6 months with an employer. So you can't stay with an employer for more than 6 months. You can visit as a tourist, you can visit family and friends, and yeah, that's about it. Also, the cost for this visa is like $440, and so if you've done 1 year on the working holiday visa and you want to extend it for a year, there is that option that's available. But for you to do that, you need to have 3 months you need to complete 3 months of specified work in regional Australia. Now, usually the specified work is like list of occupations or tasks for which there's like a labor shortage in Australia. So typically these are like farming jobs or like fruit picking and things like that fall under this category. So if you work in the region Australia for 3 months, then you can extend your working holiday visa for another year. And I'll get to what regional Australia is in a minute. Yeah, so this is a beautiful map of Australia, and regional Australia is basically regions that exclude Sydney, Newcastle, and Wollongong. So that's over here. It excludes the greater Brisbane area and the Gold Coast. So that's somewhere out here. It excludes Melbourne, which is out here, and it excludes Perth and surrounding area, which is out here. So any place outside of these countries or these cities that I mentioned is considered as regional Australia. And if you want to have your second year, you need to work in those specified areas, usually farming within regional Australia for 3 months to carry forward your working holiday visa. All right. Moving on. The work and holiday visa, which is the second subclass of visas for different set of countries. So if you're part of like these countries, my face is hiding one country, but if you're part of these countries, then you can apply for the 462 visa. Now, the only difference between the 462 and the 417 visa is that this visa, it's a bit more stringent in terms of the requirements. So you need to have an education and English requirements for the visa. So you need to have may need to take an English test, and you need to have a certain level of education to apply for this visa. You also need to have the support of your home country government. So usually what that entails is having a letter from the embassy or from the government, the concerned department in your government needs to send you a letter stating that, okay, this guy is good to travel to Australia and work and live there for a month. All right. So those are the two main additional requirements for the 462 visa compared to the 417 visa, and the list of countries is this. Oh, the other difference is in the 462 visa, if you want to extend your visa for another 3 months, you need to work in Northern Australia, which is this part right here. So it's not regional Australia, it's like Northern Australia. So limited to like a very small region where you have to work for 3 months for you to get a second year extension. Everything else is pretty much the same as the previous visa. Working holiday visa, just like my experience or what I've heard based on like speaking to people, it's a great way for people to travel and work, earn money at the same time. Um, so like Australia is an expensive place as far as like living is concerned. So if you can, if you're coming on a vacation, if you can work at the same time, that's like you're not like spending additional money, you're able to sustain your travel with the work that you do. So it's a great option for people who are looking to get that travel exposure but also are ready to work and support and sustain themselves while they are having a good time. Yeah. And moving on, a common question that I get is, hey Steven, should I use an agent or no? So now it depends on case to case basis. You can apply for most of these visas on your own. Like for example, the working holiday visa and the visit visa is something you can do on your own. If you have a little bit of time, it's very relatively simple and straightforward. But for like the student visa and the permanent resident visa, which we're about to get into, sometimes it can be a bit complicated. And even though you can do that, those visas on your own, some people choose to go through a migration agency or a registered agent that has experience in doing that. So if you have time and if you're not super busy, then you can maybe do it on your own. If you're busy and if you're not sure how to go about doing it, or it just seems too complicated to you, then maybe you can take the help of an agent. But you need to make sure that if you're going through the agent route, to find like a really good agent who knows what they're doing. The reason that you want a good agent is because the laws and the rules keep updating. So you want someone who's like up to date with the latest that's happening. And the last thing you want is someone to like carry on with your application, especially if you're doing like a student visa or if you're doing like a permanent resident visa. You want to ensure that you get those things right? So, and you want the best possible advice. You don't want someone telling you that you can get a permanent visa and then not get a permanent visa just because of some changes. So you want the best advice from the beginning. You want honest, transparent advice, and that's where having a good agent who can be frank with you and tell you, hey, you're not eligible for this, so maybe don't even get started. Or someone is saying, okay, you're eligible, this is exactly what you need to do. And this gives you like a realistic picture of your chances of getting a permanent visa or like a student visa, because those are a bit more complicated. So that's when an agent can help, but you need to ensure that you have a really good agent. Yeah, if you need help in finding a good agent, if I've come across an agent that I feel I'm confident in recommending to you guys, I'll do that. You can fill up the form and just let me know like which visa you're applying for, and if I find a good agent that I feel that can help you, I'll send them your way. I can refer them to you. Okay. But I'll only do that if I find like a really good person that I can trust, or an agency that is like trustworthy. Okay, now moving to the student visa. Okay, so the student visa is basically for anyone who's looking to study in Australia. So if you're like a young person, or even if you're like a middle-aged person, I guess you could come and study here. So let's look at what it takes to get a student visa. So a student visa, or the subclass 500, is a visa that allows a student to study in a registered full-time course within Australia. The conditions are that you need to be at least 6 years of age. So if you're like 5 years of age and if you're watching this video, I'm sorry to break your heart, you can't apply, maybe after a few years. Okay. If you also need to be accepted to study at an educational institution in Australia. So you need to apply to a university. University needs to like approve your application, and then you can apply to the government for a visa. You need to have health insurance. You can stay up to 5 years, depending on your course, and it allows you to study and work part-time as well. And the cost for this visa is $560. Some more details on the student visa that I think will be helpful to people interested in applying. So there are a few conditions that you need to meet. You need to enroll in a course registered on the CRIC course, which is this long thing over here. So basically it's like a inventory of courses that the Australian government recognizes as like being legitimate courses. So make sure that you're on that list, or your institute and the course that you're doing is on that list. So if only like you're on that list, you will be eligible to apply. But most institutions, if it's like legitimate, will be on that list. You need to fulfill the English language requirements. The reason that there's a star here is that some countries are like exempt from this. So if you're from like the UK, the USA, South Africa, and I think a few other countries, you do not necessarily need to give this test or take this test. And the test that you do need to take if you're not from those countries is the PTE academic or the IELTS. So you can take one of those English tests to prove that you have a good enough level of English to like live in this country and study. So that there are two aspects to this. So firstly, the university that you're applying for might have like a higher requirement depending on the university. Some universities have like a good university will have like a higher requirement. The score required just to get the student visa will be slightly lower. So you might you still need to take one exam, but there might be different requirements. From the university might require a certain level of English, and the government will require a certain score as well. Okay, so check with the institution or the university that you're applying to as what is the score that they are looking for. Okay, another important condition is that you need to have financial capacity requirements. So you need to be, the Australian government wants to know that you're able to like sustain yourself once you get here. You have enough funds to live here. So that can include having showing enough money in like a bank account, or you can get like a sponsor, which is like your parents, to like write a letter saying that they are ready to support you. And even if you don't have money, that you could have like financing options available to you. So you can apply for a scholarship to university. You can take a student loan if you're eligible for that. So there are different ways to go about doing that. But just be aware that being able to prove your financial capacity is something that is important, because the government wants to ensure that once you come here, you're able to like sustain yourself. You need to have health insurance, and you need to have documentation. So documentation will include like your certificates from your college or your previous university or studies. You need to get those like notarized, and like, yeah, there'll be like a bunch of documentation that you need to do. All right, some more details about the student visa now, or just some things that I've learned based on like speaking with others and my experience, is that the student visa is a really expensive visa. It costs, the university costs anywhere between like $15,000 to $37,000 per year. This is like Australian dollars, which is like very expensive for like most people. So like be sure that the course that you're selecting is like relevant to you, is something that you're interested in, is something that you want to maybe pursue a career long term for. And yeah, just do your research and make sure your reason for why you're doing the student visa is like clear. Okay, so if you're looking to maybe move to Australia on a permanent basis, just double check to ensure that if I do this course, is there a way for me to like move into the country permanently, like based on current situations, and if situation changes, like look at all those aspects before deciding to come and study here, because it is expensive. Another point on the student visa is that you can work for 40 hours a fortnight. So that's like 20 hours a week. So if you choose to like work for 20 hours a week, you might cover some of your living expenses in Australia. Like Australia is really expensive just to live in as well. So if you're working part-time 20 hours a week, you might be able to cover like some of your living expenses. You're not going to cover like your university cost in most instances, because that's like too expensive, and working part-time wouldn't pay you as much to cover this cost. Just to get you an average of like an estimate of what you can expect to earn, I think minimum wage right now is around like the $17 mark. So if you work for 20 hours a week, that is like 20 into 17, which is I think $340 a week, if my math is correct. I don't know, do the calculation someone and tell me if that's right. So yeah, that's how much you can expect to earn in a week, and can probably get an estimate of how much of your living costs are you able to like cover? Okay, the third point is you may be eligible for an extension work visa. So after studying for a few years, you might be able to work in the country for a few years, which is the next visa that we're going to get into, which is the temporary graduate visa subclass 485. So most people after studying here in Australia for a few years will also like to like work here. They find it like very nice, or like most people choose to like go for this visa, or like at least the people that I know. This visa is for international students who have recently graduated from an Australian education institution. It lets you live, study, and work in Australia temporarily after you have finished your studies. Okay, so after you've done your studies, you can like work. After you've applied for the previous visa, you can apply for this visa as of now. And this has two streams. One is the graduate work study, and one is the post study work stream. Okay, so the yeah, before we get to what the stream are, the minimum eligibility is that you need to be 50 years of age or under. You need to hold an eligible visa, which is usually the student visa. You need to have a recent qualification from a registered course. And yeah, the qualification must either relate to an occupation on the skill list. So if you're applying under the graduate visa, usually a graduate under the graduate work stream visa, you get to stay for 18 months. And so graduate work stream is for people who are doing like a diploma course out here, or is doing like a tradie kind of course out here. So tradie in Australia means like someone who's into like a particular trade such as plumbing, electrician, or things like that. So if you're doing a course that's related to those occupations, then you get to apply for like 18 months, and you need to ensure that your occupation is on the skilled occupation list, which I'll get to in the coming slide. Yeah, that's the condition for the graduate work stream. For the post-study work stream, you need to be working. Oh no, for the post-study work stream, you need to have completed a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or a PhD. And depending on the length of your course, you get to stay there for that much duration. So if you've done a 2-year course, you get to work in Australia for 2 years. If it's a 3-year course, you get to work for 3 years. So depending on the duration of your studies, you get to live in Australia for that much duration as well. The cost for this is 1,500, and you can work, study, and live in Australia for the duration of that visa. Okay, here we have some photos of Australia, just to show you guys how beautiful Australia really is. You got like beautiful parks, like the nightlife is like, it's good. You got some good restaurants. You got like events and like parades, and the government is organizing like festivals and things like constantly. Um, this is the fireworks on New Year's Eve. Public transport is like very good. Food is excellent. So yeah, it's like things are really like beautiful here in Australia, and I feel like really blessed to be here. So you have something to look forward to if you do succeed in getting like one of those visas that we're talking about. Um, Okay, now let's get to the Consolidated Skilled Occupation List, or the CSOL. Now, this is an important concept for the future, or the upcoming work visas and the permanent visas that we're talking about. You need to know about what the CSOL is. So the Consolidated Skilled Occupation List is basically like a list of occupations that are in demand in Australia, or that there's a shortage of people in these occupations within Australia. Okay, and Australia is looking to fill that the demand with getting people from overseas to fill in those demands for these occupations. So the Australian government obviously only wants people to come here for the occupations which there are shortages, right? So if you have thousands of say accountants out here in Australia, and there are like 1,000 accountant jobs, then Australia is like, fine, we do Australia doesn't need people coming in from abroad to fulfill those occupations, right? But if there's a demand, if they say like 1,500 accountant related jobs, and there's only like 1,000 people within Australia that are qualified to do that job, then the government has a shortfall of 500 people, and then that's when You need 500 accountants to fulfill that demand that is there in the market, right? So this list is basically a list of occupations that are in demand within Australia, and there are not enough people to fulfill that demand. Okay, so the medium and long-term strategic skill list, or the MLTSSL, has 210 such occupations, which over the long period, the Australian government has done research and found out that okay, these are occupations which we need people for on a long-term basis. Then there's a short-term list for which typically they require people for like 2 to 4 years. So those are like 243 occupations that are on that list. And the regional occupation list is like occupations within regional Australia that are needed or in demand. And this list is updated regularly based on like supply and demand. I think every few months this list gets updated. So please make sure that you are constantly keeping an eye on this list to ensure if your occupation is on that list or not, if you're applying under one of these upcoming visa categories that we're talking about. But this is what the list looks like. So you have your occupation, you have the code, job code, you have the list that it's on. So for example, accountant currently is on the MLT SSL. Advertising manager is on a short-term list, so Australia doesn't need advertising managers on a long-term basis. There are people within the country that can probably fulfill that role. And you have different assessing authorities that are responsible for each occupation. So if you're applying, say you're an accountant and you want to apply for a skilled visa, you need to first demonstrate to the Australian government that you actually are a skilled person. So an accountant might need to go through one of these institutes, and they need to submit an application to that institute with like documentation, with your studies, with your work experience, and different other things. That's a whole another topic. But you basically need to go with apply to these institutions here depending on your occupation, and they will verify whether this person or whether you are eligible, you are actually qualified to be considered to be falling under this occupation. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind if you're applying for like the upcoming visas that we're talking about. Okay, so the first visa is like the work visa. Now, yeah, so this basically includes the TSS, or the temporary skill shortage visa, or the subclass 482. So that's the name for this visa. Okay, let's see what this visa allows you to do. So this allows overseas workers to work in a skilled position that has been nominated by an approved sponsor for an approved occupation. Need to be in or outside Australia, you need to have skills to fill a position nominated by an approved business for an approved occupation. So basically for this visa, an employer within Australia needs to sponsor you and say that, okay, this is an occupation, a position that we have open in our company. They need to prove to the Australian government that they weren't able to fulfill that role within Australia, or finding people within Australia, so they need to like advertise it for like a period of time. And if even after that they couldn't find anyone, then they might be able to sponsor a person from another country or even within Australia to apply and give them this temporary work visa that allows you to work for 1 to 5 years depending on the occupation and the visa stream that you're applying under. Okay, so that's basically an overview of this temporary skill shortage visa. They made it very difficult, or this is like a new category that's just announced in like March of 2018. Okay, and it replaced the previous temporary work visa, and this new visa is a bit more stringent because they have higher fees associated with it. So any employer or person or a company that hires someone on a temporary work visa, they need to pay firstly a lot of like visa fees. It costs like 1,150 just for the visa fees, and they also need to contribute a certain amount of money to education or a training fund that the Australian government has, and that training fund is used to train Australian workers to fulfill these roles in the future. So anyone who's looking to Any company looking to hire a person needs to contribute, I think, $1,000+ to that fund, just to ensure that the future Australians are like trained to fulfill these occupations, right? So it's very expensive for an employer to hire person on a temporary work visa, and they would rather prefer like a permanent resident visa, or like a citizen. They would prefer to hire someone with a PR visa, just because it's so much easier for them rather than sponsoring a visa and going through the whole like documentation process, right? So usually if you have like if you're in a very highly skilled occupation or very technical role, or you have some unique ability that your employer, or that the employer can't really find within Australia, then they might consider sponsoring someone from abroad on this temporary work visa. Okay, and if you come here on this visa, then you can also apply later. Your company might be able to sponsor you for a permanent visa. That's an employer nominated scheme, which is a subclass 186. So but even for this visa, you need your occupation needs to be on that skill list that we talked about. Um, yeah, and but your employer can sponsor you, and you can stay permanently on this visa. Okay, now within this TSS, or the temporary skill shortage visa, you have three streams. One is the short-term stream, which is for 2 years, and your occupation needs to be on the STSOL, which is a short-term occupation list that we just went over. You have the medium-term stream, which is for occupation needs to be on the medium to long-term skills list, and you can apply for like a period of up to 4 years on this occupation. And you also have the labor agreement stream, which is like certain industries such as the dairy, the meat industry. Currently, like those industries, they have certain agreements with the government that there's a genuine skill shortage for these industries, and certain companies have an agreement where they can hire people for like an extended duration of time for those roles. Okay, so and this would be applied to a very small number of people, I would imagine. So like most people have asked me, like, it's a very common question, can I find an employer to like sponsor me? Now this is rarely going to happen. So unless you're part of like a global company and they have like a branch in Australia, then you might have someone from your company who might like sponsor you for this a TSS visa or a temporary visa, and then later on you can transition to like a permanent visa. But other than that, it's going to be very difficult for you to find an employer who's ready to sponsor a visa. It's not something that happens commonly. Okay, moving on is the permanent resident visa, and I think this is the visa that I applied under, and I moved to Australia under, and I think it's one of the best routes if it's an option that's available to you. This visa allows you to live permanently in Australia. Yeah. Okay, I'll come to this statistic in a minute. Okay, now, okay, so within the permanent resident visa like category, you have two main visas. One is like the 189 visa, and one is the 190 visa. So the 189 is like a skilled independent visa, which is a point tested visa, and the 190 is similar. Now, the only difference between these two visas is that the 190 is like a state sponsored visa. So you need to get a state within Australia, such as New South Wales, Victoria, Northern Territory, to sponsor your application, or to basically say that we want this person to work within our state. So it's like, for example, I applied under the 190 visa. It gives you like 5 points more if you get a state sponsorship for this visa. It's a point-based system when you apply for any of these visas. So like you get points for age, you get points for your occupation, you get points for your studies, you get points for your work experience. Yeah, and there are different things that you can get points for. You need a minimum of 60 points to apply for this visa. and depending on the competition for that particular occupation, you might require like a higher points to like get through. Okay, maybe I'll do like a separate video because this is something that I'm familiar with, but this is just like a brief overview of the options that are available. Yeah, you need to have a relevant occupation on the list that we talked about. So the medium to long term list is what your occupation needs to be on. You need to be below 45 years of age. You need to have competent English, so you need to take one of those English tests that we talked about earlier. Yeah. By the way, if anyone needs help with an English test, I have like some resources on the PT Academic that you can refer to. There'll be a link somewhere in the description. It's like a guide that I wrote on how to clear the PT Academic. So check that out if you need help in clearing the PT Academic exam to prove your English for any of the visas. And you need to be invited by the government to apply. So there's a whole procedure that I might cover in the next video on how to go about doing that. Oh, and the difference in the 190 visa is that you need to stay in the particular state that you apply for like 2 years. So for example, I took sponsorship from the New South Wales government. So I need to stay in New South Wales for like 2 years after I get the visa. This is just to ensure that the person that they're sponsoring is like not moving to other countries. Yeah. And this, not other countries, other states. And this visa costs 3670 Australian dollars. All right. The next visa, the final visa that we have under the permanent visa category is the Regional Sponsored Migration Scheme, or it's also called RSMS, Visa Class 187. So this allows skilled workers to live in Australia permanently by working in regional Australia. So we went over regional Australia. We talked about how the certain places outside the main cities that are considered regional Australia. So to apply for this visa, you need to be nominated by an approved Australian employer. So there needs to be a company outside of or within regional Australia that's ready to sponsor you a job, or say that they have a job for you. You need to be below 45 years of age. You need to meet the skills qualification and English requirement and any other requirement on the stream. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so this visa is like you sometimes find people who have studied here and their occupation is not on the main list. They try to get apply under this visa, or if there's like too much competition in one of those categories, they try to apply under this visa. But yeah, there's another option that's available to people. But in most cases, the 189 and 190 is used for people that are applying like from outside of Australia. Like these are the two categories that you need to be aware of. All right. Okay. This is another slide that I'll go through. So you also have like business activities. This includes conference, negotiation, and general inquiries. But you can also like migrate to Australia if you're a very successful entrepreneur and if you made like a lot of money. You can be eligible to apply. And you have the business innovation and investment visa, which is subclass 188. It allows business people to establish a new or develop an existing business in Australia or to invest in Australia. Okay. So for this, you need to have experience in owning and operating a business. There's like different streams within that visa, about 4 or 5 streams. You need to have $1.5 million to invest to be part of this investor stream. 5 million for the significant investor stream, 15 million for the premium investor stream. And yeah, so if you have a lot of money and if you have a successful business, you might be able to like buy your way into getting a visa. Yeah, but this visa is for like people who have businesses and who might want to start a business within Australia, and which will generate employment for like Australians. So that's the reason why this visa is available. It costs $785, and you can also apply for a permanent visa. So once you get this visa, you get to apply for a permanent visa after a certain amount of time. Some important notes in case there's someone who's out there that wants to go for this. they have under the 188 you have the business innovation stream, and there are like many requirements. This is just like the key requirement. You need to have Australian $500,000 in turnover in 2 out of the last 4 years. That's like revenue. You need to have $800,000 in business or personal assets. That's you and your partner who's applying. So if you fulfill this requirement, you might apply for the business innovation stream. The entrepreneur stream is like less amount of money, so to say. So these are for people who are starting a new business and who have a funding agreement from a third party who've like invested at least 200,000 Australian dollars in capital for their startup or their venture. So if you have something like that, then you can apply under that visa. And some of the other visas, so that covers like most of the visas or the commonly used like visas that people looking to like move here or like live here, study here, work here, vacation here. That covers like most of it to the best of my knowledge. Okay, but they also have a few other categories such as your family and spousal visas. So this is for people who have moved here and are now looking to get like their wife or their partner with them, or the children with them, or even like their parents with them. There's like a separate categories of visa that you can apply under. Australia also has a certain like refugee and humanitarian visas. So some of the countries which are currently like in like a war zone, like places like Syria, Iraq, you have like people from they grant certain humanitarian visas where they people who have like been suffered from war or suffering from like war out there, they give them a visa to like live in Australia. That's like a humanitarian visa. You also have like visas for like, so I met a person who was from like a Middle Eastern country, and she moved like ran away from her country basically to like move to visit Australia, and she didn't want to go back because she liked it so much, and she was like being not treated so well in the country that she was. So the Australian government gave her like a humanitarian visa to live in Australia. So I think that's like really like awesome for the Australian government that they're able to do that and help people in need. Some other visas that are also there is like bridging visas, travel crew visas, medical treatment visas. So people who are like traveling here on like you know, people from the merchant navy or like your cabin crew on the flights, this is like for them. But this is just a caveat that there are other visas available other than the one I covered. I just covered the main ones. Okay, now what was I want what did I want to do? Yeah, this list. Okay, so this list is the amount of visas that were granted for like migration to Australia. So this is not people who are studying or like working here temporarily. These are people who moved here in Australia for the year 2016 and 2017. So there were a total of like 190,000 people that moved in the year 2016 and 2017. This is like the planned numbers for 2017, 2018. It's not finalized yet. So basically, you had 190,000 people moving to Australia permanently in the year 2016 and 2017. Out of that, 68% were like skilled people. So and 30% were like families. So like probably like the partners and families of this people were part of the other 30%. Okay, and within these skilled applicants, like 48,000 is from the employer sponsored one. So this is like people from who got like a 186 visa. So like a lot of companies sponsor people to get like a permanent resident visa here as well. 43,000 applied as a skilled independent visa. So these are people applying for like the 189 visa in most cases that I went over. With a permanent resident visa, you have state and territory and regional sponsored, which make up 28,000. So this is covered like the 190 visa that I applied under and some of the other regional visas. You also have 7,200 people applying for the business innovation visa, and a small number for distinguished talent. So this is, I think, people who are like musicians or like sports professionals. There's a small category for them. But just from looking at this major category of like how people are moving, like so employer sponsored is like a major chunk. And the reason I think that's like the Australian government doesn't have an issue with that. So if an employer sponsors a visa, basically it's a assurance that there is a job available for the person that they're sponsoring, right? So it's better for the Australian government where there's less risk of a person moving here and not having a job. Um, yeah, so that's just an overview of how people are moving across different visa types and like how people are migrating to Australia. I think that does not include the students that are moving here or that are living here temporarily or people working on a temporary work visa. All right, so that was it. If you need any help in like with any of these visas, if you want like a consultation with a proper agent, if I manage to find a proper agent, you can just fill the form. Let me know like which visa are you looking for, and if I find a good enough agent that I'm like happy to recommend to you guys, I'll refer that agent to you, and you can like move forward with your application. I hope you found this video useful. Like, leave me a comment, hit the like button. If there's any like mistakes or errors, let me know. These are some photos from Australia that I'll talk to you about. But if you have like any comments, feedback, if there's any corrections, let me know. Make sure that you do your own checks before like applying for this visa, and because the things, rules, and all everything like changes pretty frequently. So make sure like you're up to date. And yeah, good luck for whatever visa that you're applying for. Just to end it off, these are some beautiful photos of Australia. Nice beaches, good food, good people. Yeah, it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful out here. I'm so lucky that I was able to like move here. I hope this video helped you guys, and subscribe to the video, share it with any of our friends who like need help. I remember when like I was like thinking about moving to Australia, there was like so many pages and pages and pages of like information I had to read online. And if I had a video like this, it would have saved me a lot of time. So if you have any friend who's like thinking about moving, or if there's anyone who you think this video might be useful to, please do me a favor and like share this with them. I just want to help as many people. Like getting them the right information is very important. I want to help as many people do that, and if you can share this with anyone, that would help me. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.